Welcome to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's my pleasure to reintroduce you to Yvonne Burke. I want to speak with her about her ride through California and American politics. Suffice it to say, she has been a trailblazer from moment one, the first African-American woman elected to the California legislature, the first African-American woman to serve California in the United States Congress, the first African-American and first woman on the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, for which she recently retired. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How has retirement been going for you? Apparently you're very busy still.
Well, obviously I'm very busy, but I'm not really there at the Board of Supervisors, having to be involved in some very difficult issues.
No doubt about it.
Challenging issues, I should say.
I want to speak with you about a project that's near and dear to your heart, not surprising given your history, and it's the 2012 project. Tell us about it.
It is a very important project because, unfortunately, as we all know, 2010 was not a good year for women.
In terms of electoral politics.
Electoral politics. In fact, the number of women in the state legislatures reduced for the first time.
I think back to 1992, in the wake of the Clarence Thomas hearings, when there was just a wave of women elected federally. Here in California, we have Dianne Feinstein, Barbara Boxer, still all representatives in the United States Senate. And it had been going better in terms of elections of women to federal office, but like you said in 2010.
Well, nationwide, there was a reduction. Project 2012 said we cannot just sit here and allow our numbers to diminish. Women throughout the United States, through Rutgers University and a very aggressive program there, said we will bring together women who've been involved in politics, who have studied, and say, what do we do to get more women filing for office? The first thing they said is we have to look at women who have been successful, are involved in their communities, and encourage them. For some reason, there is this belief that women won't run unless they're asked.
And it's also interesting, it can be so very expensive to run for office. And when you think about men versus women in the workforce, I don't know, maybe it's stereotypical, but men seem to create these networks that can build fundraising opportunities, and women don't necessarily have those networks. Am I being stereotypical?
Well, you know what? I think that was true at one time. But today, when I inquire about it, they say women have the ability to raise money.
Ability, no doubt, but what about the networks,
well,
those built-in networks?
There are many women who are eager to support women,
of course,
and to provide money for them. Recently, Nancy Pelosi was here in California with women who are running from Congress throughout the nation and giving encouragement, and Gabby Gifford was there.
Gabby Giffords, of course, the former congresswoman from Arizona,
right,
who was shot, but she is on the mend, no doubt. But here's what's interesting. For her office, 2 men running.
Yes.
I mean, so often, look, we should be
gender Arizona.
That's Arizona. We should be gender blind, race blind, whatever it may be. But that being said, look, I'm the father of 2 daughters, as our audience knows, and there is something to be said for having substantial representation of women in governmental bodies.
It's absolutely necessary. You cannot have any kind of democracy, and you cannot have any representative government unless you have all of the people who are part of that government represented. And in the case of women, you're talking about over 50%. So you absolutely have to somehow bring women into the top leadership. And we aren't doing this well in the United States.
I learned actually that we rank 78th in the world in representation, in women representing us. 78th?
At the national level, that is correct.
I mean, the UAE is higher than us.
That's right.
Cuba's higher than us.
But what happens in emerging countries, women are running for president of the country. They're
Mexico
running for
right
Congress.
now.
That's right. So for some reason, the United States has not been able to push through, and we have to do something about it. We have to say to women who have the ability and who have the time, many women who their children are grown or they're even in college, it's a good time.
But how, my sense is that in the wake of the Watergate scandal, government has continued to be seen as an ugly profession. It's not a view I espouse. And so could it be that women themselves are just saying, I don't want to get involved in that?
No, because
They
I
are.
always say this, you know, the only reason there weren't women involved in Watergate, there weren't any women there.
That's fair enough.
You know,
Well
so,
stated.
you
And
know,
you were a Watergate, aren't you a Watergate baby? I mean, you were elected
that's
to
true.
Congress right around that time?
That's right, during
Right.
that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really saying that we have to make sure that it's not stacked against them. We have to give them encouragement to run. The one thing apparently is that many women want to know that there's someone behind them, they're being encouraged, that there is information on how they can raise that money, information on how they put a campaign together, and all of these things will make the difference. That's why 2012 has been very successful. We have more women running in states where there's never even been a woman elected to the Senate.
And this is a nonpartisan effort, by the way.
Of course, it's nonpartisan.
And when you say the Senate, you mean the United States
United
Senate.
States Senate.
So right now, I mean, we're losing Olympia Snowe from Maine. She's not running again. Dianne Feinstein, I think it's fair to say, is the odds-on
about
favorite.
elected,
What other women are we looking at?
Well, actually, there were 3 women who did retire. And then there are new districts, though, as far as Congress is concerned. But on the Senate level, there are open seats. And there's something like 9 open seats and there's redistricting.
Right,
You know, that's one of the things you have to remember, good and bad.
Right.
Redistricting has had some very positive opportunities for women in new districts to run where they're not running against an incumbent.
What about in California? We recently had a primary election. We have 52 congressional seats.
Right.
Do we see any women stepping up? I'm just trying to
You
harken.
mean to House?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, we have. Right. There were women, something like 10 women who were in this primary.
Right, who are advancing.
Advanced and made it through the primary.
Right.
So we will have women who are running in the general election. And another thing that is different this time here, the way it's set up in California, it's the top 2.
Right.
And that may be positive or negative. I don't know exactly how that's going to affect women.
I-
But we know we have 2 women who are running against each other who were members of Congress.
Oh, right. Janice Hahn, for example, is running against Laura Richardson, right?
And that's the result
2 Democrats.
of redistricting.
Let me ask you, by the way, about the nonpartisan nature of your organization. When you look at female representation in elective office, it tends to be fairly democratic, especially, and I mean big D, not little d, especially in California. Is that part of the issue when you look at more red states, that they're just...
Well, what we're seeing is that women are running as Republicans as well. I don't know whether it's Sarah Palin or what it is. I mean, when you have a woman on the ballot as vice president, that's going to have some impact.
No doubt about it.
And there has been an impact. There are more Republican women running in states where there have not been elected women to the Senate. And as a result, you're going to see additional women. Now, I know that some of the issues must be very difficult for some of them, but you have to realize that even if we go over in Tea Party, an awful lot of women involved
No doubt.
in the Tea Party.
I mean, and in some ways they're talking about government, not so much the social issues, which I must ask you, seem to have kind of torn the country apart recently. We had a whole discussion about contraception over the spring. I mean, do you think that that conversation would have been as charged if more women had been in the federal Congress?
Well, you would have to have women in leadership. And that was a big issue there. You had a study, you had people testifying, and they didn't bother to bring any women to testify. Now, if you have more women and they're there for a longer period of time, they're going to be in those leadership positions.
In our final moments, how important is it to this project and generally to have Hillary Clinton, Condoleezza Rice, Elena Kagan, Sonia Sotomayor, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I mean, at the top levels of government?
It's so important because women need to see someone that looks like them, that they can identify with, so that they know it is possible.
And I have to tell you, I believe you are one of those women. I have admired you for years. I am sad in some ways that you're not in elective office anymore, but I know you're doing great work, and I want to thank you so much for joining us on California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back.
Which state has the lowest percentage of women in its state legislature? Alaska, South Carolina, Texas, or Wyoming? South Carolina ranks 50th in terms of the percentage of women serving in its state legislature at 9.4%.
Welcome back to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest is Sean Magee. He is a detective in the Long Beach Police Department's Gang Investigations Unit, and he has become an expert in graffiti and graffiti analysis. How did this happen, Detective? How did you become such an expert in graffiti?
When I was getting my bachelor's degree.
In criminal science, criminal justice, by the way.
Yes, I had an internship with a company that's now called Graffiti Tracker, and what we did is we analyzed gang and non-gang graffiti, and it was my job to determine whether or not a piece of graffiti was gang related. If it was, I would determine what they are communicating in the message and the monikers or nicknames that are contained within the graffiti.
And here's the key point that you'd like to make, if I may speak for you, is that not all graffiti is gang related. I think that everyday people think that if there's graffiti on the wall, somehow it's a gang signal, but that's not necessarily the case.
That is correct. I would say most of the general public perceives all graffiti as related to a criminal street gang, but
right.
When you look at it, oftentimes you can't read it. It looks like a bunch of scribbles.
Right.
In that case, most likely it is not gang related.
See, that's interesting. I thought the scribble was gang related. It was their secret language, but not necessarily.
It is a secret language between the non-gang graffiti writers. However, with gang members, they want to communicate a message about territory, and they want their enemies to see it, potential victims to see it.
But here's what's interesting about graffiti is that in Long Beach, in Los Angeles, in so many major cities, if graffiti goes up, it's coming down pretty darn quickly. I mean, it's fairly easy with these water blasters to remove graffiti. I mean, even in tough budgetary times, are we removing graffiti at a pretty rapid rate?
Yes, we have a very successful program, and before the graffiti is removed, it's photographed digitally, and I can go back and access each piece of graffiti that was removed from public property. So later on, if a tagger or gang member is arrested writing graffiti, we can later use that potentially for the prosecution.
I understand recently you went to a store and you bought some items that are used by graffiti. I guess the word is artists. I mean, some are artists, but people who engage in tagging.
The important thing to know is if you write on someone's property,
That's not art.
It's not your property, and you didn't have permission to do it, it is a crime.
What's a little troubling about some of the products you have brought, I mean, clearly some of these, leather polish, I would presume that could be used for my black shoes, and, this big Sharpie arguably could be used.
Yes.
But this product, I mean, the cover of it, you can see, we'll get a tight shot, I mean, it's selling graffiti.
Yes, it is.
I mean, it's trying to market directly to graffiti artists, graffiti taggers.
Absolutely. It's a worldwide market. Graffiti is very popular in Europe, too. This can is a pocket can. It's easily concealed upon the tagger's person. And then they also sell different tips. For example, this is a New York thin tip.
Right.
You have a fat cap.
Right.
With
we'll get
different
some shots of this, yes.
With different tips, you can make wider lines, thinner lines, depending on what you're doing. One of the most damaging substances is this. It's basically called acid etch or bath etch, and you could take this, which I also bought at the store. It's basically a refillable marker. It's made by a company called On the Run. It is for graffiti, and you could pour this in. You could write on a window and have that permanently defaced.
Oh, I
Causes
see.
lots and lots of damage.
Right. So
it's
it
very
literally
difficult.
it burns into the window.
Yes, there is a legitimate purpose for the acid etch if you're
Art. I mean, I've seen
Yes,
it. It can be
yes.
very beautiful.
Exactly. And then the other thing that they do is they take these things, they're called streaks, solidified paint markers. They'll take out the substance inside, they'll cut it down the center, mix and match colors, so you have a multiple color marker.
Let me ask you, if you come upon someone engaging in graffiti, what should you do?
Be a good witness. Do not intervene. There have been many instances where normal citizens have intervened and they have been confronted with gunfire or
Tell me
violence.
about Maria Hicks.
She was gunned down in Pico Rivera in 2007. She was 2 blocks away from her home. She's a grandmother. She observed a subject writing on a cinder block wall. She honked in order to try to intervene, get the subject to stop, and the subject opened up gunfire on her and
She was
died.
killed.
Yes.
Was the perpetrator located?
Yes, and he was found guilty and recently sentenced.
I want to talk about the blight that graffiti causes. You're on the streets day in and day out. Why is it important that a community focus on graffiti abatement, graffiti removal? I mean, one could argue we have a lot of priorities, and maybe we should just, let them do what they do and move on.
Because graffiti gives the perception of lawlessness. If, for example, if you're a drug dealer and you want to sell drugs somewhere, you see graffiti all over the streets, you think to yourself, wow, this is a place that doesn't really care. This is a place where I can get away with this stuff. If you're a criminal and you want to break into some cars and take a stereo, you look around, you see graffiti everywhere. Once again, this is a place where no one cares about, there's no pride of ownership, and no one's going to call the cops on me.
So is there anything that we can do, either as residents, as business owners, no matter where you live, to try to minimize graffiti, be it through abatement, be it through prevention?
There is a graffiti hotline which will be displayed on the screen. You can call it in, and that tells our abatement people to come over there, paint it out, and they will take a photograph of it.
But what about just generally speaking? I mean, I got to think that these individuals that are tagging, they're looking for something, the perfect canvas, I guess you could say. What can we do to try to prevent our homes, our neighborhoods, our businesses from being a target? If anything, maybe there's nothing we can do. Maybe we just need to be vigilant. But
I see your point. I mean, there are targets where they'll look for a certain background. For example, like a bright yellow wall that faces a main street. That is a good target for them. Or big windows, also a good target for them. But it also starts at home with parenting. Parents should be able to recognize if their kid is into graffiti vandalism. Graffiti vandalism is almost like an addiction where the tagger will start writing over everything. You'll see it on the TV, on the sofa. Some people will even tag on their own pets. And it's all over their backpack, their schoolwork, their folders. They have markers. They have bandanas to conceal their identity when they're out. They have gloves, and it's 80 degrees out.
At the same time, we know that some of this graffiti can be visually appealing, visually stimulating. Are there programs, either in Long Beach or otherwise, to try to direct these people, they may be artists, to try to get them away from the negative impacts of graffiti and get them into art school or something, whatever it may be?
Yes, there are legitimate forms and ways to make money off graffiti. Sometimes businesses will hire somebody to do a mural on their wall, and that mural will deter graffiti that is not so easy on the eyes. Other cities will have legal walls where you get a permit and you get to hit up a section of the wall, but the problem oftentimes with that is that it leads to illegal graffiti all around the place because the people on their way to the legal wall will start practicing on somebody else's property.
So as we conclude, sir, are we beating the taggers?
I think Long Beach does an outstanding job at taking away the graffiti, documenting it, which is most important, and prosecuting it.
I want to thank you so much for what you're doing for keeping the streets of Long Beach, Southern California, and California safe from taggers. When we come back, we are going to be speaking with an artist from China. He happens to identify himself as a gay man, and he is doing some beautiful paper art. He has come to Long Beach. He is displaying his wares in the city of Long Beach. My name is Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on California Edition.
How much does the city of Los Angeles spend on graffiti removal annually? 3, 7, 15, or $18 million? The Los Angeles City Office of Community Beautification averages $7 million on graffiti removal yearly.
Welcome to Charter California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. I am very glad you are with us because I want to show you some absolutely exquisite artwork that will be on display in San Pedro through July 14th at the Flash Alley Art Studio. It is brought to us by the Lesbian and Gay Center of Long Beach, and the artist is with us from China. His name is Xiyadie, and he is a gay Chinese artist. That is how he defines himself, and his artwork is just magnificent. We'll talk about him in a moment, but I'd like to just show you one piece. He is a paper cutting artist. Hopefully Ron can grab this shot. It's a little tricky, but it is very exquisite and incredibly delicate. I'm gonna pass this off to my good buddy, Dave. We're gonna show you some other images as we progress. Thank you for joining us.
好，不用客气。
Before we talk about your art, I hope it's okay if I ask you about being a gay man in China. I would think it would be very difficult. Is it?
在同志圈哈，同性恋在中国是不是很难出人头地？
And this is Alan Kwok, who is his translator.
我还没听明白。
在中国大陆啊，同志会不会很难生存，很难活动
在北京我没感觉到这一点。
？Only Beijing, I don't feel like that, but everywhere I can feel that it's no freedom and
So in a large city like Beijing, there's a
Shanghai,
little more there's a little more freedom.
Yes.
I know that he's actually married to a woman because that's what you do in China. He has 2 children, but he does have a boyfriend in China right now. Is that correct?
yes.
I want to talk about the artwork, which is absolutely magnificent. Here is an example of some of the, and it fell off, and I apologize for that. I will hold it up. This paper cutting artwork is just exquisite. And in a lot of ways, Xiyadie uses his art to help express the gay lifestyle, the ability to have a loving relationship between 2 people of the same sex. Is that correct?
在这种表现的这种从你的作品当中表现哈，能够让那些同志们这些同性恋他们对这个作品的感受能够有相同的这种感应吗？
应该是有，因为我
Yes.
经历了好几个。
Yeah, my art always making people come out.
And is that difficult in China, under its system of government, to put scissor to paper and depict gay relationships? He's allowed to do that?
在中国的政府能够让你这样子剪这种同性恋的作品展现的给别人看吗？
他们也没有发现我，我这人一直在孤独的环境搞这种。
So they never found me, but one thing I always working by myself. So whatever people want to show up from somewhere, I still don't know where did they show up because I let those people to handle, to managing for me. But I only do my work, so I don't know what's going on.
But I wonder, you are now in the United States. You're on a television show. I have to think that maybe word is getting out that he's becoming a well-known artist. Is that okay in China?
你没有想过，现在你在美国这样子的，透过这样子的媒介报道你，你会不会影响你在中国的整个工作跟你的生活呢？
我没有想过，因为追求你自己心中最美的东西，我不在乎其他的。
Yeah, I never think about that because my pursuit is for my inside, the beautiful world, a beautiful mind. That's my point. I don't care what they think, what they doing. That's not my concern.
It's inspiring, and as I'll hold up this piece, I would like Xiyadie to explain to us how he does this.
你们可以跟他解释一下这个图片的 内容跟意义在哪里？每一样解释一下。
也就是你刚才问的问题吧。
The meaning just like you asking you asking the question exactly that way.
But how, literally, I mean, it is so intricate, it is so delicate.
你可不可以告诉他每一样东西的象征跟代表？
这个剑悬上方，也就是这个环境很残酷、很恶劣。
The soul is a expression. This society, the situation is very cold and tough.
还有什么比一个蛇盘在你的胯下更恐怖呢？
Have anything more horrible and scaring you? The snake down on your knee to scaring you.
How did you learn how to produce this beautiful work?
你怎么去表现？从那里学到去表现这些象征性的意义谈吐。
我怎么去表现？因为我要说话，我要用一个平面的东西，借用植物和动物，借用自然去表达我心里想要说的话，所以我就剪这些，他们能帮助我。
The only thing is through the piece of paper can express myself from what I see, what I feel, to show up my speaking.
Would you actually make a piece of art for us as we sit here right now?
你们可以做一个象征性的一个剪裁，用你的小小的纸张跟那个剪刀做个示范。
那我就简单的剪一个蝴蝶吧。
Okay, his sample is to cut the butterfly.
Wonderful. And I'll talk to you while he's doing that. Is that all right?
Okay.
Do you know how we found Xiyadie? How did he wind up coming to the Long Beach area? And you can answer that if you know the question, if you know the answer.
I think one of the artists went to China and looked at his product, and then he wanted to know Xiyadie. So that's why Xiyadie get found from jar. So.
And you were born in China.
Yes.
Is there a certain pride that you have to see such a gifted artist who happens to identify himself as a gay male?
I think that's very, for me, it's a very scaring product because it will be get caught, put in the jail, or maybe you're ruining your whole life.
Right.
Can be. So maybe, or you lose your family, your friend, your relative because of that product. Yes, it's kind of like a very, we would say a modern art. Very modern art.
So it looks like Xiyadie is done with this really intricate butterfly. It's interesting because there are two copies of the same thing, and I'd love to show it to you right now. Thank you. So this, I'm going to put this up against some white paper so you can see it. The detail is just exquisite here. If you could see that there. And then Xiyadie was kind enough to show I can put it right on my lapel like this, which is just beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. My daughters will love it. Oh, it fell off, but that's okay. I am so incredibly impressed with your work. And the best news is we can all see the work of Xiyadie. It will be shown at the Flash Alley Art Studio in San Pedro through July 14th. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Brad Pomerance. Thank you for joining us on Charter California Edition.